So a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Planning Committee meeting here at Lichfield District Council on the 8th of April 2024. Thank you, members, for attending, and also we have members of the public as well, and a speaker, or possibly two speakers. The first item on your agenda is apologies for absence, and I've had apologies for absence from Councillor Hawkins, and also, excuse me, Councillor Powell did telephone me earlier today to say that he might be running late. I am expecting him, but I would expect probably not until about 6:15. So Councillor Powell will be turning up, all being well. Any other apologies? I don't think there are, because otherwise I think we have a full house. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, the second item on the agenda is declarations of interest. If you do have a declaration, please show. Councillor Rushton, please.
I'd like to declare an interest for the second item of 5 Stafford Road, Lichfield. Okay. I'm a city councillor for Lemonsley, but I come with no predetermination tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rushton. And Councillor Checkland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm District Councillor for Samewood.
Thank you very much. Any others, please? Right, so I have to declare a personal interest. The first application, the speaker, Sarah Jane Beach, is known to me. It's only a personal interest, but I am declaring that. Thank you. So members, that moves us on then to the third item on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, the meeting that was held here on the 4th of March. And you've all had a copy of those minutes circulated electronically. And if you're happy for me to sign them as a true and correct record, then I shall do so. If you're happy for that, can you please show? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Okay, so we now move on to the main item on the agenda, which is the planning applications. And we have two this evening, the first of which is 230044/FUL. It's Blackbrook Hall, London Road, Lichfield. And to take us through this report, we have the Senior Planning Officer, Mr. Tom Ansell. Tom, when you're ready, please, if you could take us through this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. This application concerns a Grade 2 listed residence known as Blackbrook Hall and its associated agricultural buildings, which are arranged in an L-shape forms to the east and southeast of the main dwelling. It creates an enclosed courtyard. It is around 4 miles to the south of Lichfield City, and it's accessible off the southbound carriageway of the A38. It is within open countryside and the West Midlands Greenbelt. There's a public footpath that crosses the site to the south of the buildings. About there, that's very approximate. It is, as I said, Grade 2 listed, and the associated barns are curtilage listed. The northernmost parts of the site, including part of Blackbrook Hall, are covered by flood zones 2 and 3. So this area closest to the brook, and the entire site is identified as suffering from critical drainage issues. Blackbrook Hall and its associated buildings are located to the east of the A38 and M6 toll. It has historically been known as Blackbrook Farm Antiques, a retail premises wherein customers can visit and browse purchase items that are displayed. The site therefore benefits from a large car park to the south of the building complex. And the barn itself has been internally subdivided into a number of units and sections. The site is fairly enclosed by trees, which are found to the north of the building complex and south of the access and track into the site. And to the northeast are properties that lie to the south of Hungary Lane on the approach to the settlement of Weeford. So this slide has just been prepared to show the positions of the nearest non-ancillary residential premises relative to Blackbrook Hall. So Blackbrook Hall's here, and then you've got residential premises along Hungary Lane here, and then some down Dog Lane as well. So I'm just going to take you through some photographs of the site. These were taken in January, and these photographs, as you can see, were taken from inside the courtyard and then outside the frontage, respectively. This is where the large extension is going to go between the two buildings. So the extension will tie into the gable of the house and the gable of the barn. These photographs just show parts of the existing barn. They're not going to be changed, or changes will be minor in nature. And then this will be replaced by an extension. This building here will be replaced by an extension on slightly larger footprint. And then this photograph is showing the position of a further extension, which is to be house a kitchen to serve the new use. The frontage of the building, the south-facing elevation, remains virtually unchanged, save for some very small changes to fenestration. These photographs show the access track into the site. So this is from the car park looking towards the A38. This is from the A38 or near the A38 looking down the access drive towards the building. This is looking out to the A38 from inside. And again, this is like the view up the A38 to the south. The works proposed involve extensions to the buildings within the complex. So that's a two-story extension between the farmhouse and agricultural building to the south. A replacement building to create a wedding breakfast and reception room. And the new extension to create a kitchen. Extensions 1 and 2 will be finished in contemporary materials, timber cladding, sheet glazing panels, metal cladding to the roof. And extension 3's finish will be aligned more closely with that of a simple ancillary agricultural shed, so no openings, still retaining timber cladding. A new balcony is proposed at first floor level, where the two-story side extension is proposed here, to allow the cafe to have additional covers. And this plan has been updated, so this elevation here is the side elevation of this building here. So the site's entrance will be demarcated by now a fence, which will then tie into some piers, and there'll be no gate across this entrance here. But the rest of the access remains as before, with wrought iron gates across the driveway to the site. The parking plan has been provided, and it shows the site providing 79 parking spaces of appropriate dimensions and with sufficient space to allow for safe manoeuvring into and out of spaces and for larger vehicles to enter and leave the site in a forward gear. So this vehicle is a refuse vehicle. As covered before, there were concerns raised relating to the application's registration as a minor development rather than a major development. It has been contested that it should have been a major development. So these drawings, which are snips of the full drawings, have been provided to establish the extent of floor space changing use and the new floor space being added, some of which are placed as existing buildings. So these have been added to the system and will become approved plans so they can be conditioned. The drawings show that the total floor space that will be in sui generis use as a wedding venue following the implementation of the development is 722.9 square meters. This is less than what was originally listed on the application form. This differs from what was originally listed on the application form. It is less than the 1,000 square meter threshold for major development. So it is proposed that these plans are added to the list of approved documents referred to by condition 2 of the permission. And then one further condition should be inserted, which will robustly control the floor space within the development that will become a sui generis wedding venue. It'll be worded as approximately something like the floor space that will become a wedding venue sui generis as part of this development, either through change of use of existing floor space, the replacement of existing floor space with new floor space, or the development of entirely new floor space, shall comply at all times with the areas shaded in green, pink, and blue on the drawing numbers, appropriate drawing numbers, both received on the 1st of March. So that will become condition 21 of the permission. There is an associated listed building consent application, which has been dealt with under delegated powers. It has not attracted any objections on heritage grounds. It only covers the elements of the development that impact the fabric of the listed buildings. Councillors are requested to consider the principle of development, noting its location in open countryside, the design and visual impact of the development, including the impact on the green belt, the impact on residential amenity, noting noise in particular, access and highway safety, impact on trees, ecology and flood risk. The published full committee report establishes the evolution and developments of the application since it was deferred in March. And then following the publication of the full committee report, negotiations with the applicant and environmental health team move forwards positively. And this is summarised in the committee supplementary document. And the positive negotiations have resulted in the recommendation being amended to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in pages 34 to 39 of full committee report 8th of April 2024 in accordance with the modifications changes specified in the supplementary document. And there have been no other comments or points raised that require a verbal update. So after careful consideration of all relevant matters, officers conclude that the application should be supported for the reasons set out in the accompanying reports with conditions imposed as described and the aforementioned condition controlling the amount of sui generis floor space. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Ansell, thank you very much indeed for that. And of course, as was mentioned several times, we're revisiting this, members, since the meeting that we held on the 4th of March, so that we can address some of the points which were raised by members. And so I hope there that you've heard some comprehensive advice on how some of those issues have been addressed. So we have two speakers, and the first one this evening is the objector, which is Sarah Jane Beach. And I noticed that the applicant's agent has now arrived, Mrs. Claire Preston, and so thank you very much. So you will both have 5 minutes to speak. Sarah Jane Beach, you have 5 minutes. I think you'll be fairly familiar with the protocol. I would imagine so. And so with 30 seconds still to elapse, you will be notified by Christine on my left that you've got 30 seconds left. So you have a full 5 minutes. But if you're still speaking at the end of the 5 minutes, you must stop the moment that Christine announces that the 5 minutes is up. Okay. Thank you very much. Your time will commence the moment you start speaking. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I am here on behalf of the Parish Council, but also as a direct neighbour. Firstly, as requested, a parking plan has been provided. Each space is 2.4 metres, the bare minimum required. Within this application, there are no plans to resurface the loose stone car park, and so the chances of people parking that close with no line marking is next to zero. There are 79 parking spaces on the plan, but Blackbrook Hall building has been approved for 12 offices in another application. 9 of them are available to rent and advertised on the Blackbrook Hall website, publicised for up to 68 people, with another 3 offices left. The parking in this new plan has already been allocated in the previous application. They just didn't think you'd realise. So with all the chefs, kitchen staff, waiters and bar staff for the wedding venue, and the same again for the restaurant and the cafe and coffee shop, the retail staff, and we're not talking small boutiques, we are hundreds of up to thousands of square foot units. Then all the guests and clients, managers, maintenance staff, cleaners, etc. 3 to 4 times the amount of parking will be needed, and that's the very least. They mention the ratio of wedding guests to parking spaces, but fail to mention any of the rest. There is a public footpath through the middle of the parking plan, the style blocked off by cars. It has also completely blocked off the agricultural access to the neighbouring field. In reality, though, a brand new fence has been erected straight through the middle of this plan, proving there is no intention to follow what's been presented to you. Either way, the footpath is affected and the agricultural access still completely blocked off. They mention photographs of overflow parking. If these are the ones in the design statement, they are the grassed areas. However, if these are to be included as additional parking, it should have been included within the red lines, and it hasn't. Including this area takes the application over 1 hectare and therefore a major application, hence why they don't want to mention it. The Old Schoolhouse restaurant in Weeford was refused a conservatory on the grounds of not enough parking. It was to cover the outside seating area, not to increase guest numbers. This application looks to increase numbers tenfold. Drainage. The drainage strategy is for, and I quote, new build and infill builds to existing hall and farm. It has not been produced for the use this planning application has since changed to. Commercial kitchens, and this site will have a few, have special regulations regarding the equipment needed to be installed in order to stop grease, fats and detergent from entering the water system. The Environment Agency were also consulted on, I quote, new build alterations and building improvements, classed as less vulnerable in accordance with flood risk vulnerability classification. However, a restaurant and wedding venue come under the more vulnerable classification. The Environment Agency has not been consulted correctly. And lastly, and most importantly to the village, the noise. Last month, we were told in this room 65 decibels was to be the proposed noise limit. 1 month later, and this has risen to an external music level of 75 decibels at 9 p.m. until 9 p.m., 100 decibels internally with no finish time. If I may quote the decibel scale, every increase of 10 decibels on the decibel scale increases the intensity by 10 times and sounds twice as loud. Therefore, the noise levels proposed today are twice as loud as last month. It is proposed external doors are to be kept closed for the duration of the entertainment, but I ask you how this is possible because you can't stop guests for whatever reason going in and out for the duration. No condition states when the event must finish. Residents from Swinfen have made us aware of their complaints of 24-hour religious weddings. There is no mention of guest noise externally, singing, cheering, shouting, car doors, and vehicles leaving at whatever time they choose to finish. This noise is impossible to control and, of course, 100% inevitable. For reference, a shout or car door slam are both at 85 decibels. The World Health Organization state 55 decibels causes significant nuisance, 50 is moderate, but this is daytime noise. We're talking about a pretty much silent village at night. So to conclude, I ask you to refuse this application. Refuse on the grounds of complete lack of parking included, the total disregard for the footpath and neighbourhood, agricultural access, refuse on the insufficient drainage plans for the size of this establishment, and refuse on the totally unacceptable noise levels proposed at all hours of the night and morning. The plans provided are a complete mismatch, either non-existent, outdated, or cleverly produced in order to look viable on the surface. I ask, as you did last time, to see straight through them. Thank you. And then if I might add, the plans of the nearest properties on there has missed out the closest people, so that's also not correct. Thank you.
Sarah Jane Beach, thank you very much indeed for that. On behalf of the residents of the village, the parish where you are, thank you. And so I would like now please to introduce the speaker, who is the applicant's agent, and this is Mrs. Claire Preston. You will be familiar, I'm sure, that you have 5 minutes, 30 seconds to go. You'll be notified and your time starts as soon as you commence speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your opportunity to speak to you today. The application seeks consent for the erection of a single-storey rear extension, two-storey link extension and balcony to form cafe, restaurant and wedding venue with the installation of access gates. The officer's report identifies all relevant material planning considerations and arrives at a recommendation for approval, which is welcomed. The application was heard at committee on the 4th of March. During the debate, members felt additional information was required in order to reach a decision, and it was therefore resolved to defer consideration of the application pending receipt of further information on the following elements of the proposal: frequency and size of wedding events, access and visibility, on-site parking and manoeuvring, noise impacts and ventilation strategy. The applicant has made a concerted effort to take on board members' concerns and has provided further information on each of the aforementioned elements, the details of which are set out within the submitted addendum. However, to summarise, the applicant has removed the brickwork entrance piers and changed to a timber to improve visibility, moved the orangery entrance from the northern elevation to reduce any noise impacts following comments from the EHO, clarified the external music limit and agreed with the EHO at 75 dBA, which is workable for all parties, actively engaged with a mechanical ventilation consultant who has provided draft guidance on the ventilation strategy in order to minimise noise transfer, produced more detailed parking and manoeuvring layouts to demonstrate parking capacity achievable on the site. Officers do not consider the frequency and size of the wedding events to be a particularly exceptional or a cause for concern, bearing in mind the extant lawful use of the buildings and the existing premises licence. In December 2023, the applicant was granted a premises licence. Activities authorised by the licence permits plays, films, live music, recorded music and performances of dance. The times the licence authorises the carrying out of the aforementioned activities are 11 a.m. till midnight, which covers late night refreshment every day, sale by retail of alcohol every day, and the opening hours of the premises every day. There are no objections from highways in terms of on-site parking and manoeuvring, or use of the existing access and visibility in terms of the revised gate plans. There are no objections from environmental health in terms of the proposed ventilation strategy, and the applicants have agreed to the proposed conditions put forward in terms of managing noise impacts as set out in your officer's report. In summary, the proposal remains as described by officers in the original committee report. The applicants have provided additional information which responds specifically to the queries raised by members at the previous committee meeting, particularly in terms of noise impacts. There continues to be no objections to the application, and officers consider the additional information and agreement to noise-related conditions address the concerns for the application's deferral, and as such, we hope that you will follow your officer's recommendation of approval. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Mrs. Preston, Claire Preston, thank you very much indeed for that. So, members, you've now heard the opposing views, if you like, the views of the objector and also now the views of the applicant's agent. There's quite a lot to go out there because this is quite a complex application in many ways with some ramifications which have been detailed by the objector. Do we have any comments, questions, please, for the planning officer? Okay, Councillor Salter, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. Yeah, a few points, actually, if I may. At the last meeting, I raised a question on condition 17 in respect of the decibel levels and the location of the measurement for that external, what appears now to have been changed from noise to music. I don't quite understand why. I mean, noise is, has been pointed out by Mrs. Beach, created by a lot of other things than just the speakers from the performance. So I don't quite understand why it's changed from noise, covering everything, to just music. And again, that increase of 75 is a considerable difference. I also note at point 4 that there is a noise. There should be installed a noise limiter. Now, there are different types of those things. Not all are particularly effective. The one that I always came up against in my career were sort of a traffic light system whereby the sockets on the stage area were linked to a sound level meter, which when the traffic lights changed from a regular green through amber to a flashing red, if it went solid red, the power was cut. That was regularly got around by simply running an extension lead from another socket somewhere. So totally ineffective. Also, with modern equipment, that instant cutoff can be damaging to modern electronic equipment. So that's something to be considered. It goes on in that paragraph to talk about the monitoring of the noise level. Now, does that mean that this is simply a monitoring situation or an actual physical limiter? If it's monitoring, then it's down to the people behind the bar or wherever to enact the levels on that and tell people to cut it down, which is, you know, very difficult if you've got 100 or 2 people enjoying themselves and want to carry on as loud as they can. A little further on in the informative section, it only mentions live music, and I firmly believe it needs to be included with recorded music. In actual fact, recorded music can be played very much louder than live music, particularly on indoor event, because with indoor, when you've got microphones, you get howl round if it's too loud. With recorded music, that doesn't occur, so you can wind it up as loud as you like. I'm also concerned about other usage of the facility. We've got an anticipated 2 to 3 weddings per week. Is that sufficient to make the whole thing, which is going to be a very expensive setup, viable? And is it likely that the venue will be used for other events during the week, such as traditional parties, 18th, 21st, and all the rest of it, which themselves can bring an awful lot of problems associated with the demograph. In fact, most places just don't allow 16 to 25-year-old parties. So, you know, it's an open opportunity, if you like, to fill the gap for that. What was the other one there? I'm sorry, lost my train of thought there a little bit. A little bit surprised to see at 4 on page 9 that there had been no re-consultation of neighbours, although we have heard this evening, which is, I was pleased to hear. I didn't think we would be hearing from anyone. I think that covers everything. Thank you.
Councillor Salter, thank you very much. Councillor Vernon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I pass Blackbrook Farm quite regularly on the way to my daughter's house. I must admit, when I go by, I always look to see where the residential properties are. And to be quite honest, I've never really noticed any. So my question is, how close is the nearest residential property to Blackbrook Farm? As a comment, when we had the meeting the last meeting was that in March, there was talk about safety. The one thing about accessing and leaving Blackbrook Farm is there is a de-acceleration lane and an acceleration lane, so there should be no safety problems leaving from the property. So really, there's no visibility problem either. But the question was, how close is the nearest residential property? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vernon. Well, I think we've got a graphic at the moment which shows the properties in proximity to Blackbrook. The pale green shaded area shows you where there are properties. I would guess that we're looking at probably 200 meters or something like that. I would say about 200 meters. Okay, so we're just having a quick measure on the.
What I'm actually doing is just, I was aware from the first speaker's comments that it was suggested that I haven't highlighted the closest neighbour. So what I'm doing is just looking at the address points using GIS to see if I can find the closest one, and then I can provide a measurement.
Tom, I think there are properties on the other side of the A38 which probably have been overlooked in terms of their proximity. The map, unfortunately, that satellite view doesn't show the other side of the A38, but I think
that is true. There is
going to ask. Yes,
I
okay. I'm getting a nod from the objector just to say that there are properties on the other side of the A38 which perhaps haven't been incorporated into the research.
There is a property known as Pump House to the west of the A38. I believe it's a property. I don't know if it's a residential property, but it's 200 meters away to the west.
Okay. So there you have the graphic displaying the properties which are nearest to Blackbrook Farm. So I hope that gives you information relative to the impact or potential impact of noise. Thank you very much, Tom, for that. Councillor Salter, you made quite a few points. I'm sure there were some questions incorporated in that. So I would imagine, Tom, you were making a note of some of the points raised by Councillor Salter. Did you wish to come back and address some of those, please?
Yes, just for absolute clarity, I've identified a property known as Lavender Cottage, which is to the north of the site and to the west of the A38. And it is Lavender Cottage is 173 meters away.
Thank you very much.
Clarify that.
Thank you for that.
In terms of, so there are a large number of points were made on the various changes and things that have sort of developed. I don't believe I can remember every single one, but I can pick up on a couple. I note that, I first of all, there's a question about what other uses could the wedding venue might be used for to make it viable. So I actually asked a question of the applicant in the preparation of the updates when I was trying to ask for new documents. I was asking for new documents to be submitted, and I was looking to limit the number of events, seeing if there was a potential to limit it to 2, but I was advised that having an upper limit on the number of events per week would make it unviable. However, there's no reason for the council to explore. The council couldn't explore the applicant limiting the use, sui generis use, to wedding venues only. So if a wedding venue, weddings were the only events that they'd been budgeted for in terms of making it a viable use, we could condition it so that only weddings within the sui generis use class, which isn't really use class, it's for everything that isn't a use class, we could look to do that as a means of stopping the other sorts of parties and events taking place as suggested.
Thank you for that. That I think would be useful. That is what the application is for in writing. Would that fall to this committee, or would that be a licensing issue?
Imposing a further condition, I believe, could be agreed as part of a recommendation. So it'd be approved subject to the conditions as discussed, including adding on that one, I believe.
Can I just mention the other points again for clarification? Yeah, the reason. Yeah, just very briefly, the reason for the change from noise to music on condition 17, and the reason for a 75 from 65 increase on the same condition, and then the addition of the word recorded within the general sound conditions rather than just live.
I see no reason why the word recorded could not be added into the informative point 2, how live and recorded music will be effectively monitored in real time. Just make sure it refers to the noise management plan, and then please see informative X, which will become informative 3. So I don't see why that would be unreasonable to add recorded to that, to make that tighter and in terms of controlling both sorts of entertainment. The increase, bear with me just a moment, I'm trying to navigate to the reasoning behind the increase. Essentially, these changes to condition, what I believe were condition 17, were requested directly by the applicant following further discussions with their acoustician. That's where referring to external music, I believe, came from the need for the application, the condition to be more specific in order to pass the tests that are required of the condition itself, by the NPPF of conditions. And then the decibel increase was proposed. Just if you bear with me a moment, I'll try and find that.
If I can just say, while you're looking at that by specifying it, it sort of limits the powers, for want of a better word, of enforcement on it, because if you're only supposed to be measuring the amount of music, and yet there is a louder volume of noise, then it's a losing situation.
Can I just come in there as well? I know that it does say 3 meters from the noise source. I think that probably means the 3 meters from the external wall containing the noise source. I would imagine that's correct. It's not the noise source itself, is it? Because that would actually be an internal measurement.
Yeah, I mentioned at the last meeting. Right. I mentioned at the last meeting, Chair, that 3 meters from the noise source officially is the speaker, the loudspeaker, and therefore 3 meters would still be inside the room. So it needs to really clarify that it's an external measurement.
External measurement, 3 meters from the external wall. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, of course. I think Artemis Christofi wishes to come in.
May I borrow? Sorry. I just wanted to make a very quick point about conditions, just to remind members that conditions have to meet the 6 tests of being reasonable and necessary. So when considering tweaking of any of those conditions, that we are mindful of that going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Artemis. So in other words, those conditions could be challenged.
They could be challenged, yes.
Okay. So as Artemis says, they have to be reasonable. Okay. Tom, did you wish to come back at this point, or do you want me to take questions from
If
other
you
members?
take
at the
further
moment?
questions, I'll find the answer in due course.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, counts. Oh, wait a minute. We've got several now. I'm not sure who was first. Do you know who was first? It was who? Sorry, Councillor Anketel, please.
Thank you, Chair. When I expressed concerns about a parking plan last time, I envisaged a hard surface with lines painted for parking spaces and also lines showing driveways for traffic to move around. And judging from the objective statements, it seems to be that the parking area is just going to be grassed, just existing grass surface with no possibility of permanent parking lines and driveways with arrows marked. And I'm a bit concerned about that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Anketel. Councillor Vernon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the proposal, which says erection of single-storey rear extension, two-storey link extension and balcony to form cafe, restaurant and wedding venue. Does the cafe and restaurant work independently of the wedding venue? Because we only seem to be concerned about how many days the wedding venue would be operating. I presume the cafe and restaurant is basically working 7 days a week, and we haven't sort of talked about the problems of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vernon. We'll come on to that in just a few moments. I'm just going to take questions now from Councillor Evans, please. Thank you very much. We'll come on to that in a moment. And so I have a question now, I think, from Councillor Chetland, Vice Chairman. Councillor Chetland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just from what was said as to the objection, it was mentioned as there's also an application in relation to 12, I think it was 12 business units, and the parking space that will be connected to that. I've had a quick look online. I can't find anything in relation to another application for that premises. I wonder if there's any clarity on from the officer. The other point was in relation to the parking spaces for the wedding venue. I think it makes reference to 79, and what would be the minimum number of parking spaces expected for that particular venue, i.e. is there a surplus within those parking spaces? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chetland. I think in answer to that, the protocol is it's normally considered 1 car for every 2 or 2.5 guests. So you'd normally just do a little bit of maths for that. But I'm going to hand over now to Tom Ansell to answer quite a few of those questions. Thank you.
Okay, first to just come back to the reasoning behind that conditional changing. That is condition 17. What I would like to do is just summarize the justification provided for that. So it is submitted that it is submitted by the acousticians on the applicant's side that 65 decibels is classed as normal conversation, is quite a low level of noise. It was raised by some committee members that being restricted to just normal conversation at all times of day seemed quite onerous and difficult to enforce. The Code of Practice on Environmental Noise Control at Concerts does provide guidance on minimizing disturbance or annoyance to local residents in the vicinity of events. And it indicates that the music noise levels, which when assessed by prediction or measured during events, should not exceed the limits at 1 meter from the facade of any noise sensitive premises for events held between 9 AM and 11 PM when considering a rural venue. So it was submitted that there was confusion between the noise level at the venue with the noise level at the noise sensitive premises. So the noise level at the venue itself versus noise level being experienced at the premises to near the venue, so the neighbouring properties. So the noise report is advised as concluding that music in the courtyard, the noise emissions from the courtyard on the north side of the long hall with an acoustic act or a PA system operating at a level of 75 decibels is a very low level that is unlikely to be perceived as indicating acceptable impact. And then patrons in the courtyard, 50 guests all speaking with a raised voice, 66 decibels at 1 meter for 100% of the time is a very low level that is unlikely to be perceived. So that justification was provided, it was put to the environmental health officer, and that formed part of their response to the council, wherein they offered no objections to that in change to that condition. So they have reviewed that justification and have concurred, and they are happy that the rewording as submitted in the update documents is satisfactory.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I just bring us back to the question about the business units? I forget which one. I think it was Councillor Checkland. Couldn't find any reference to that, but of course the objector did allude to it. Of course, that would have a detrimental impact on car parking if that is in fact the case. Can you just clarify that for us, please?
Certainly, Chair. That is something that is certainly a good point, with existing offices remaining advertised. So what I would say is that if I was appraising this in terms of parking provision, I would need to look at the parking requirements set out in the supplementary planning document for business use B1, which is a sort of offices that are likely being provided, which requires one space per 25 square meters up to 250 square meters, then one space per 30 square meters beyond. So if we assume a worst case scenario of 500 square meters of office floor space available, notwithstanding what the applicant is saying or advertising on their website, if we're going to apply the supplementary planning document, the adopted document that is used to control parking standards within the district, then we're looking at a requirement of 19 spaces for 500 square meters of office floor space. So to kind of tie it into the answer to another question, the industry, there's no guidance on wedding venues specifically within the supplementary planning document. I have done a look, this is just based upon looking at how other councils have adopted it and how the industry expects it to be approached. And it's one space for every 2 to 2.5 guests, 120 guests, 2 parking spaces, 60 guests, plus 19 equals 79. So there's providing 79. There could be all those spaces taken. Now, a point was made about service vehicles and vehicles attending to deliver things and parking for people attending at wedding planners and everything like that. And that is a fair point, and it's something that could be explored using a condition. I was thinking of like a service vehicle strategy or some specific part of the site that could be used for accommodating them within the red line that wouldn't necessitate a further change of use or anything like that. That could be looked at in that way. But what I would just emphasize is that the Highways Authority have considered the submission as before the committee and have not objected. They have no concerns over what's before you.
Okay. I have Councillors Rushton and Councillor Mears as well. Councillor Rushton, please.
Thank you. I think a lot of the points that I wanted answering have kind of already been asked about the parking. But another thing that the objector referred to was, I think, a footpath through the car park line. So I just wanted more clarification on that and the rules around that. And I should have my glasses on, really. I can't see it very well. But on the highlighted 4, obviously that goes through a track, I think, or is it an entrance into the car park? I can't see where it kind of ends, as in where the car park will end. Will that not be blocked? Because it looks very tight fit, and the car park itself is a very tight fit as well. So I'm just wondering how that might work, especially when it is a busy event. I think that's going to be blocked.
Thank you, Councillor Rushton. Councillor Mears, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested to understand how this will be addressed if you've got a cafe and a restaurant and a wedding venue and retail outlets and office space, and you've got the public coming and going to and from that. There doesn't seem to be any regulation in what the restaurant can do and the cafe can do? Because if the noise regulations apply to the wedding venue, but then the entertainment is booked under the guise of the restaurant, there's no control on it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of your question. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Vernon, please.
I just wonder, when we're all talking about noise level, has anybody ever carried out a decibel level rating of the noise from the A38 passing along there, and what the noise level is already at the nearby houses? So that's just the question. What is the sort of background noise level?
Thank you very much, Councillor Vernon. That's a very valid point, because, of course, these premises are within a few metres of the A38. So there's already considerable background noise, as you correctly suggest. Certainly during the daytime, of course, a lot less at night time, I would imagine. Okay. Tom, you've got quite a few questions there, haven't you? Two new questions, actually, two new subjects which have been raised by Councillor Rushton were footpaths and flooding. So if we could address those at some point as well, please. Thank you.
Certainly. Looking at the footpaths, as you know, I'll just pick up on a point about controlling noise at the other facilities. So we've got the cafe and the restaurant. These are being included in the sui generis. These are on the plans as being included within the change of use. So these will be captured by the permission in terms of the wedding, in terms of the noise limits, these will be captured. So even if we could, I suppose, to be absolutely sure, reword the conditions or tweak them so that even if they're in use and they decide to book a band, but there's no wedding, that they are captured then. If it doesn't already do that, I can inquire, that those inquiries can be made and we can tweak it if necessary. But I'm confident that what's shown is captured in that sense. To move on to the footpath. So I don't have, I've got an indication as to where the footpath goes. In terms of blocking up and putting things in front of footpaths that stop them being passable, it is becomes almost a different, becomes the public right, the rights of way officer control team as part of the Highways Authority would intervene if any public footpath was being unlawfully stopped up. So if access along this footpath was hindered. Now, if we granted permission and for this development, and in order to enact this development, they needed to alter the footpath, reroute it, temporarily stop it up, they would have to come in and do an application. I don't think it's a planning application. I might need legal to help. It's not a planning application, but they would need to, it would come to the council and be dealt with in that sense. So there'll be control. Just to pick up on concern about the gravel, I'm sorry, I'm just remembering things that were said. I'm just trying to answer them as I remember. We can also, notwithstanding the parking plan, we can ask for, as part of a landscaping scheme, there to be a delineation of the spaces using granite sets or any means that is appropriate to its locality. So that's absolutely controllable and absolutely reasonable to do. So it's not just a free-for-all on a gravel park, which I appreciate would be a concern. Flooding. Cut off time. So there is a license which cuts people off at, I think the license is 12 midnight. A planning condition can be used to limit when all entertainment could be cut off. So no entertainment beyond a certain time. That would supersede the license. So they'd have to comply with the planning condition. The license doesn't give them the ability to overrule. They'd have to stop at 11. If we limited it to 11 or 10:30, it would have to be limited to then. The license, even if it gave them the ability to go on till 12 AM, the condition would be what they have to comply with. So I don't, I think it was rightly pointed out that there isn't a condition actually stopping events, wedding events or entertainment, notwithstanding either from ceasing. Again, we could look at putting a condition on if it reassured members that produced a cut-off point. And finally, the flood risk. So the flood risk, the flood zones cover just this section of the site here. None of the floor space changing in use or being developed or being provided is within a flood zone 2 or 3. It is all within a flood zone 1, the lowest risk. So that's how it's been appraised. And I might have missed a couple of questions.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come in here, Max, at all? Max Houth, legal officer. I think you were just perhaps intimating there that you wish to come in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'd just add a couple of comments to what Tom was just saying. Firstly, with regard to the condition to capture the noise from the restaurant and also the cafe, that in my view would be caught by the proposed condition 1, which refers to external music associated with the development. Now, the development is the change of use. Just bear with me. It's the erection of a single-story rear extension, 2-story link extension, and balcony to and from the cafe, restaurant, and wedding venue. So, in my view, condition 1 would actually capture the noise from those aspects of the development. With regard to the condition about a terminal hour for weddings, I mean, clearly we have to be careful because obviously there are 2 regimes running here in parallel. We've got the planning regime, we've got the licensing regime. The planning regime shouldn't be duplicating conditions that are already attached to the license for the licensable activities. So if you were minded to impose a condition in relation to terminal hour, you'd have to be quite clear that we're not talking about the actual noise or the provision of alcohol or anything like that. It would have to be the wedding itself would actually stop and guests would have to leave within a particular time. I think the difficulty with that is obviously, as Artemis has already said, there are conditions to impose, tests to imposing conditions. They have to be necessary, they have to be enforceable, precise, reasonable. I can't quite remember what the other tests are now, but I think it's arguable, firstly, that such a condition wouldn't be necessary. It's not been asked for by environmental health. They haven't raised any concern about a terminal hour. They're quite satisfied with the conditions which have been proposed by the applicant's representatives. And it's also, arguable also as well that it may be difficult to enforce in terms of when people actually leave. I mean, in terms of the music and the alcohol, it's very easy for the person who runs the operation to actually have control over those aspects. But in terms of people leaving or, the actual event stopping, it's very difficult to enforce that, arguably. So I think members just need to be very careful when they're talking about imposing additional conditions or changing existing conditions, that we're ensuring that the proposals are actually necessary, reasonable, precise, enforceable, relevant, and what was the 6th? I can't quite remember, but I think members just need to really be mindful of those tests.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Max. Oh gosh, we've got several now. I'm going to take them in. Right. Okay. Well, Councillor Cross, please. Councillor Cross first. No, I'll take them in this order, if I may, please, just to try and keep everything tidy. Councillor Cross, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Well, I've been sat here quite quietly, as you've all noticed, listening to all the objections and conditions and everything else that's been put here. I've also read the documents in front of us very carefully several times, and I propose that we recommend approval for this application and delegate it to our planning management transformation consultant, who is now our planning director, Artemis Christopher, to approve the planning application subject to the conditions set out in our report before us, and to take on board many of the conditions that's been raised here tonight, and many of which should be included in this conditions of approval. That is a proposal, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cross. That's not acceptable. Yeah, no. Councillor Cross, thank you very much indeed. Yes, the principle of that is okay. We just need to be a little bit specific about which conditions we think need to be included, please. But I'm going to go to Councillor Salter first.
Thank you, Chair. If I may come back on the point Councillor Cross, or the second point of Councillor Cross's in a moment. Just a couple of points of clarification, really. So we mentioned about the already existing licence conditions being a cut-off at midnight, but can we have clarification as to precisely what that cut-off is for, whether it's for the sale of alcohol, the cessation of music, or the closing of the venue, as it were? And then we can perhaps work to how our own conditions can fit in with that. I am still very concerned about the parking. Relieved to hear about perhaps having a condition of markers of some sort, so there isn't just random parking, which I think if you're given the opportunity to park where you like, you give yourself plenty of space to open your car door. And in doing so, you're going to lose about a third of the parking spaces if every car does it. I'm also concerned that it's been suggested that the overspill car park, for want of a better term, is actually on land outside the curtilage of the site itself, and wondered how that worked in respect of permissions or all the rest of it. Going on to that point about Artemis having the delegated powers, with the greatest respect to Artemis's abilities, I would like to see, or to have the committee have sight of the recommendations that Artemis may be signing off, as it were, before it actually happens. There's an awful lot going on here. Finally, just again, a clarification. You've mentioned, Artemis, we've got to be careful with tweaking conditions, but I raised the point earlier about it sort of conforming to the application itself, that it is a wedding venue. Can we make that condition? It was suggested at the time that we probably could, so that it is, the application calls for a wedding venue. Can we limit it to weddings?
Thank you very much, Councillor Salter. Is that acceptable to?
I'm not sure that we can, but maybe Max might want to explain it better than me.
Okay, all right. Max, obviously the concern there being expressed by Councillor Salter is that it is limited to just weddings, and to condition that, could you please just clarify whether you consider that to be reasonable and enforceable as well, along with the other 4 criteria?
I think in terms of enforceable, it would be enforceable, but it just raises the question whether it's necessary and reasonable. I mean, the difficulty is that there are no objections from any of the statutory consultees. Environmental Health are particularly happy. Well, I wouldn't say they're happy, but they accept. They're not raising any concern subject to conditions. But also as well, what we need to remember is that outside of the planning regime, there is a licensing regime. There's also the Environmental Protection Act. So if there is noise from the premises, I mean, I know we're talking about planning tonight, and we're talking about trying to control it by planning. There are powers open to the council in terms of reviewing the license, or potentially serving a noise abatement notice if there's a statutory nuisance. So planning isn't the only control to control those concerns. And I think if you try to impose condition restricting the use of the premises solely to weddings, I think potentially that could be unnecessary, and it could be unreasonable, and it could be subject to challenge.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Max, there for clarification. As I say, I'm going to work. Sorry,
the other points that I raised though about the parking and the overspill. Is that, you were nodding there, Tom? What control is there on that?
Okay, if we could answer those points, please, Tom. Thank you.
Sure, for sure. This land here is not in the required use to accommodate parking. Under permitted development, I believe that they could use it for 28 days in a calendar year under permitted development as parking of overspill parking after 28 days within a calendar year. So between January 1st, December 31st. After that 28th, on the 29th occurrence, it's a breach of planning. It would be a change of use. So in order to use these in compliance with the planning regulations in excess of 28 days per calendar year, the council would need to be in receipt of and approve a planning application to change the use of this land to overflow car park. Again, I'm guessing that's sui generis use as well, to associated or ancillary to the wedding the use of the building as a wedding venue / the use of the building in general. Obviously, I'm just putting it out there, but that hasn't happened. So at this moment in time, this land is not to be considered car parking, other than it can be used for up to 28 days in a calendar year.
Thank you very much, Tom, for that. So yeah, permitted development rights there gives them the opportunity to use that that location there for 28 days. Next one, I'm going to work clockwise. So I don't think Councillor Evans, you wished to speak, did you, or did you?
No, Chair, I was just asking when I asked my question for clarification, really.
That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Taylor, you didn't wish to speak, no. Councillor Galvin, no. So Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I must confess I'm even more confused than when I came into the room. The conditions seem to be very vague. They're in flux. We're not sure whether they're legal restrictions or planning restrictions in some cases. And we have no definite answers on noise or parking, which I think seem to be the major obstacles presented by the objector. I would therefore recommend that we defer the decision until we have more concrete conditions and we know the legality of these.
Okay. Councillor Ashton, thank you very much. I mean, if we haven't got definitive answers, then possibly we need to try and seek those and tease them this evening, because we have deferred this once. I would be reluctant to try to defer it again, but of course that would have to be a member decision. That's not my decision at all. But I think at the moment I'd prefer, the preferred course is to try and establish definitive answers which satisfy members here this evening before we resort to another deferral. But I accept the point you're making. Thank you. Councillor Vernon, please.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the problems that have been brought up are not really going to affect the residents, like parking. Does that really matter one way or the other? The thing that really concerns me is the noise nuisance to the neighbours. And what I would ask, has anybody carried out any noise survey? We're talking about 65 decibels and 75 decibels. I must admit, to me, I haven't got a clue what that means. So if we're talking 75 decibels outside the property, after 9 o'clock, when there's a noise abatement, and we've got 150 boozed up guests singing New York, New York, what would that decibel level be at the nearest house? It would be interesting to carry out some survey where we blast some noise, music or whatever, and have some noise measuring equipment at the residents' property. Because if there is a big noise problem, to be quite honest, I'm confused like Councillor Ashton. I don't really know if I want to make my mind up, but I would say, could we defer it again? But I would like to know how much the residents are going to be affected by this venue.
Okay, so we talk about decibels. As the objector, Mrs. Beach, pointed out, if the decibels increase by 10, it's effectively a logarithmic scale. It does mean the noise level doubles, but the noise intensity multiplies by 10, but the actual sound as we hear it is double. So what you're saying is, do we have any real world evidence what 75 decibels sounds like from some of the neighbouring properties? And what would it sound like at 11 o'clock at night? We have obviously acoustic reports, and the whole point of the acoustic reports is that you have professional people who are trained in that particular field to give a professional opinion about the likely impact. And so that's really what we're working with at the moment. But I know that you wish to come in, don't you?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Just on that, on the noise, we can ask and impose a condition whereby we ask the applicants to submit a noise monitoring report. So we could ask from the first use of the site that they submit something maybe at 6 months in, and then at 12 months in, so that we can, is that already in the?
Just to confirm that the informative that advises what the noise management plan requires specifies point 5 or V that the noise management plan needs to include details of any proposed record keeping in relation to the noise management plan. So
Yeah,
we
so
can
we've
obviously
already
at
got
that
that.
point, if they propose X and we're not happy that X is onerous enough, with justification, we can impose Y. So it could be, let's say, every 6 months or something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
we've already got that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So that condition, if you like, that situation has been addressed, is already addressed within the conditions. Thank you very much, Artemis, for that. Councillor Checkland, you wish to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm not an expert on noise. I wear hearing aids. What I have done is I've had a quick look on Google, which I don't know if I found a spoof site or otherwise. The average car at 30 miles an hour is 62 decibels. The normal car being driven out on the road is between 70 and 90 decibels. So if we're looking at a level of noise that we're talking about, that's the sort of level that I believe we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Checkland. Councillor Anketel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like a condition to be made that the parking markings be fixed or permanent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anketel. I had actually made a note of that, and I tend to agree with you, so that we have sort of clear delineation of the parking spaces. So that would, I think, that's a condition which we need to put to the members in a moment, but thank you for that. Councillor Salt, please.
Yeah, sorry to keep coming back on this. It was a point that I raised right at the beginning, and I don't think was answered, and that is in the point 4. It states about the installation of a noise limiter, and then goes on to talk about noise monitoring. Which is it, and how is it, for clarification? Thank you.
Okay. Come back on that point, please.
Sure, thank you, Chair. I will also try to address some of the uncertainty around the noise conditions. So just to absolutely emphasize the point, the applicants have provided a noise impact assessment. The noise impact assessment must be provided, it must be undertaken to certain standards. I don't know, I can't quote the standards off the top of my head, but they are specific British standards. They are the acoustician that the applicant hired produced a noise impact assessment upon request of the council's environmental health officer, and it is on the basis of that technical document, which, like yourself, it's not something that I'm terribly familiar with, but that has been reviewed by our environmental health teams over and sort of it's been formed part of the negotiations, and it has resulted in the conditions set out in the supplementary report being presented. Those conditions have been worded by the environmental health officer using the ones that I initially brought to committee as a template. So the environmental health officer, the person who is skilled in reviewing the environmental health report, the noise report, has reviewed that, has reviewed my conditions, and has provided me with this list. No further conditions. They haven't proposed any other changes. So they are happy that the development is acceptable subject to the conditions provided in this list. So that's where the reassurance, in my view, should come from, that the technical documents have been reviewed, they've been undertaken properly, it's been reviewed by someone of technical expertise, and they've been found to be sound. So in terms of, so to answer the point about the noise limiter, that is wording that they have agreed to. You're talking about whether it is a cut-off noise limiter or whether it is somebody's looking at a decibelometer and then pressing a kill switch if it goes too high. It states in condition 4 that it's to be monitored in accordance with the noise assessment. If you allow me a few moments, I will review the noise assessment to see what exactly it says in that regard. Is that going to be? So I'll take a couple of minutes just to do that.
Thank you very much. So members, there's an awful lot there to take in and to assimilate, actually. I think the drainage issue that was mentioned, I think that's of little consequence, to be honest with you, because we're talking about just the brook area. So certainly the drainage issues and the flooding, etc., is nothing to be concerned about. I think the major concerns this evening are coming from parking. And we've clearly had a condition proposed by Councillor Anne Cattell that we have clear delineation of the parking areas. And does that seem to be a sensible idea? And if so, do we have anyone willing to second that proposal? So Councillor Salter then, okay. In fact, you're all more than willing to suggest that as a good idea. So, yeah, so I'm going to say that we've had that proposed and seconded by Councillors Anne Cattell and Salter. Okay. Okay. Councillor Cross, at the moment, I know that you've proposed that we effectively take on board the recommendation in the report, and then we can delegate the conditions to Artemis Christofi. I'm just trying to establish some conditions, but I need you. I'm not suggesting you have to fully withdraw it, but at the moment, if you could just temporarily withdraw it, please, so that we can go through some of these conditions. Is that acceptable to you? You can always come back if you wish.
Okay. Yes, if it helps the committee. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so that's been formally withdrawn, but of course it can come back. So, Councillor Vernon, please.
Could I, like Councillor Anne Cattell, impose a condition? We've talked about noise monitoring systems. Could we introduce a condition that there is not a manual override, but it is an electronic override that shuts the sound off internally at a certain decibel level? And if we find that it's too loud and it's affecting the adjacent properties, that could be turned down so that the internal noise doesn't creep outside and affect the neighbours, because that to me is the biggest problem. So if we could impose a condition that there is an electronic noise limiter.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Thank you very much for that. Before I get a seconder for that, I just really want to put the first condition that we're talking about, which is the clear delineation of the parking area. So that's been proposed by Councillor Anne Cattell. It's been seconded by Councillor Salter. Can I just have a show of hands, please, if you wish that to be a condition, were this to be given approval? Thank you very much. So that is a condition that we wish to add on the parking area. We now have a second condition then, Councillor Vernon. You heard the implications of that. So you have an automatic cut-off for the noise, and that is both for live music and recorded music, isn't it? Which was a point made by Councillor Salter. So that's been proposed by Councillor Vernon. Can we have is there a seconder for that proposal, please? Councillor Cross, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so the proposal is then that we have an automatic noise cutoff, which limits the sound. That would be, is that internal sound or is that external?
If I could just come in on this point, I don't want to hold up that resolution, but I've found the noise report where it talks about the internal noise monitoring, and the internal noise monitoring is essentially DJ and staff representatives are regularly checking during the evening that noise levels are not being regularly exceeded. The monitoring will be conducted using a monitoring system which has been installed. DJs will be asked prior to and during the event to ensure that they comply with the constraints of the noise limiting system set at the event at that level. As part of the sound checking early in the day, the DJ will check the system will be capable of operating within these levels. So it's not proposing what is being suggested. What I might suggest is that condition 0.4 on this document, the internal noise limiter condition, at the end, instead of saying it will be monitored in accordance with the noise assessment section 5.1, it could say, and notwithstanding the contents of noise impact assessment, it shall be monitored in accordance with details to be provided within the new noise management plan, i.e. condition 3. So they basically we're asking them to resubmit monitoring that is more onerous and more robust within the scope of that condition.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. Councillor Vernon, are you happy with that? I think that probably achieves what you're trying to suggest.
Yeah, you're saying, does what I propose relate to the internal noise or the external noise? In some respects, it doesn't matter what the internal noise is, because if the walls are thick enough, what we're concerned about is what the external noise is 3 meters from the property, was it? We were saying it shouldn't exceed 75 decibels. So it doesn't matter what happens inside the property when they sing New York, New York, but we must make certain that 3 meters from the property, it does not exceed 75 decibels.
Okay, I think the point that that Tom Ansell has made is that has been covered in the current condition. So I think to try and impose what you're suggesting would not be in any way, I don't say it wouldn't be beneficial. I don't think it would change very much. So I think the condition as it's written is probably all-encompassing and achieves what you're trying to suggest as well. So thank you very much indeed. Right, so we've had that one condition, which is to do with the parking. Tom, did you wish to come back? 'Cause I know you've got 1 or 2 other points you wish to come, and then we must go to a vote very shortly, but I'm going to come back to Councillor Vernon, Councillor Cross in a minute. Tom, please, Tom Ansell.
I was just going to advise that the informative, which describes what should go in your noise management plan, does ask for information on how external music noise will be effectively monitored in real time during an event to avoid noise levels exceeding the limit 75 decibels stipulated by that condition, and what actions the venue would take to subsequently enforce the limit. So that is a requirement. The informative is asking for that information as part of the condition. The informative is not it's not legally binding, but it gives the council a more solid ground upon which to refuse the condition if they fail to meet those requirements.
Thank you very much, Tom. Right, I'm going to come back now to Councillor Cross. Councillor Cross, you very kindly withdrew your proposal, but I said I would come back to give you an opportunity. Do you wish to reimpose that now as your proposal?
Thank you, Chair.
Subject to the condition, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, would you like me to read it again?
If you would like.
Going to be saying the same, except that it's delegated to the director. So we just need to be.
And we're not incorporating the condition.
So at the agreement of the purpose. So I think the only difference would be that instead of it just being a
So actually, Councillor Cross, we're back to the point that you were making 20 minutes ago. If you'd like to enunciate what it was you said, please, and then we can go from there. And then I shall probably be seeking a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I propose to approve this application and delegate to the Planning Management and Transformation Consultant, Artemis Christofovi, to approve the planning application subject to conditions set out at the end of the committee report prepared for committee dated the 4th of March, Appendix 1, and subject to officers, the Council Environment Team and the applicant agreeing to fully justified and defendable noise-related planning conditions, which use the comments received on the 12th of February as a starting point. In addition to that, the conditions which we have agreed here tonight, which has been proposed and seconded.
Thank you very much indeed. That's a very comprehensive appraisal, Councillor Cross. Thank you. So that's the proposal. I'm now seeking whether that, sorry.
What conditions have been agreed?
Well, the conditions we've agreed, I think, obviously we considered the parking proposal where there's clear delineation of the parking areas. We've already had a fairly exhaustive appraisal of the noise controls by Tom Ansell, I think. That's, I think, self-explanatory. The flooding, of course, was not an issue at all. The hours of operation, I think that's clearly shown as being 11 a.m. till midnight. We've decided that we cannot control the number of wedding venues, the wedding events during the week. So that's clearly been shown to be unenforceable and could be challenged as well. So we've got the parking, which has been agreed by members. And I think the conditions as written in the report concerning noise are all encompassing and I think generally are acceptable to members, but I'm just getting a slightly equivocal look there from Councillor Salter. Councillor Salter, please.
Yes, sorry, there was the point of the clarification of the hours for the licensing, what those hours are for, and how we can combine the conditions to match whether the license is for music or alcohol or closing of the venue itself, and how we can align to that or add our own changes to it, if you like, that fit with it. There was another one which I've forgotten there. Sorry, where was it? Yeah, I meant talking about the noise limiter, a physical switch off. I mentioned right at the outset that it can be so easily got around and can be damaging to equipment. So I think we're wise to not go along that route. Yeah, thank you.
Right, I've been advised that actually, Councillor Cross, I probably need you to stipulate the conditions that you would like to be included, please. Councillor Salter, what?
Just remember the other one, Artemis suggested a record of the monitoring. I think that we need to have that as a condition. That is already in. It will need mentioning on this, won't it? Thank you.
Covered by the planning officer, Tom Ansell. That has been covered by Tom Ansell, the planning officer. Thank you. So Councillor Cross, yes. As the proposer of this, I need you to just enunciate, please, if you would, the conditions that you particularly want to be incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The two conditions which I would particularly like to be included is A, the parking, the marking out of the parking, and B, the control of the noise.
Okay, well, I think the control of the noise has already been, it's already incorporated within the conditions, isn't it? But I think you pointed out that you wish Artemis Christofi to be given the powers to impose those conditions when the final report is written. Is that correct, Councillor Cross?
Yes, Chair, that's what I said. And I said on the first proposal and on the second one.
Thank you. And of course, that is
now our planning director. So I think we should deal.
Thank you. And that is as per the report, of course. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Members, it's a fairly exhaustive process, and that's exhaustive, and possibly I could incorporate the word exhausting as well. Councillor Cross, thank you for your proposal. I now am seeking a seconder for that proposal, please. Councillor Mears, you're seconding that. Thank you.
That this is known, that they withdraw theirs, because we technically.
Okay, I think that was. I think it was Anketel, wasn't it? Councillors Anketel and Vernon, or was it Ash? You seconded, didn't you? Okay, so right. So what I'm being asked is that the condition that we agreed, if that can be withdrawn and then it can be incorporated within this, Councillor Cross's proposal. Is that okay? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So we are now left the net result of all.
So now, yes, we have one proposal.
Okay. So the net result now is that I have a proposer, and that is Councillor Cross. I have a seconder, which is Councillor Mears. And all that remains for me to do, members, is ask that you vote on this, whether you're in favour, show of hands, in favour of this application with the conditions which have been proposed, and the acceptance that those conditions will effectively be written up by Artemis Christofi as the planning director. If you're happy to delegate that to Artemis Christofi. Would you please show if you are in favour of this application, please? I think that is unanimous. It's NEMCON, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, everyone. And a special thank you as well to Tom Ansell, who I know has put a lot of work into this and has worked assiduously over the last few weeks to try and bring this together. As I've made the point, it's quite a complex application, and I know that it's been a difficult one to determine. Thank you very much, members, for that. And we shall now, in a few moments' time, move on to the second application of this evening. But I can report that 230044/FUL, which is the Blackbrook Hall application, London Road, has been passed by this committee, subject to conditions. Thank you very much.
I fully appreciate this is not to in any way change the decision. I did mention that, and I think Artemis nodded in agreement that perhaps the committee could have sight of the final document. I'm resting again on the question I've raised a couple of times on the licensing times and how it links. Is that possible?
Okay, Councillor Stalter, thank you very much indeed. I think the way that we're going to have to do this is that Artemis Christofi will be given jurisdiction, and but prior to those being signed off, then I shall be consulted as the chairman of the planning committee. So whilst that doesn't quite meet the request you were making, I think it does go some way to assuring you that I, as chairman, will have sight of those conditions, and I hope that you can trust me to make a measured response to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, we now move on to the next application, which is 23/01057/OUT. Thank you very much there to Mr. Tom Ansell. Thank you, Tom. This then is 5 Stafford Road, Lichfield. And this is an application for the demolition of the existing property. And then it's only an outline, so there are no issues to be discussed in terms of the reserved matters. I'm just trying to, here we are, okay. So we're not talking reserved matters this evening. This is simply an outline application. So what we're doing is really putting it to the planning committee to agree the principle of the demolition of the existing building and then the creation of up to 4 residential properties on the site. To take us through this, I'm going to now look to my right, and I can see that Claire Saint is very eagerly wanting to give us this report. She's been sitting very patiently all evening. So Claire, this is your opportunity then to go through this report, please, for 23/01057/OUT. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you very kindly said, this is an outline application for the demolition of existing commercial buildings and erection of up to 4 numbered dwellings, with all matters reserved for future application. This application has been brought to committee due to the objection of no more than 2 dwellings, which is brought by Lichfield City Council. So the application site is here on 5 Stafford Road, in a residential, mainly residential area. The existing buildings are actually commercial. They're currently used as a fireplace shop, with a sort of mess of a site at the back, if I'm being honest, there to the rear. So the application initially came in as 5 terrace dwellings with parking to the front elevation. This was negotiated by myself with the applicant following comments from other statutory consultees, and it was reduced to 4 number dwellings with parking more in line with the existing street scene and local area. As you've already said, this is an outline application, so therefore all materials, design, final landscaping and parking will be decided in any subsequent reserve matters application. So therefore, we are simply seeking approval as to whether the creation of new residential dwellings in this is acceptable in this location. So here's an aerial photo of the site. As you can see, it is mainly residential dwellings of all sizes, scale, etc. Photograph number 1 shows the site from the south elevation, looking northwest, I suppose. And then photograph 2 shows you the rear, as I mentioned, the rear of the site at the moment. Photograph 3 again is the rear, and photograph 4 is showing from the northern side looking south. This is the proposal plan. So as you can see, it would be for 4 dwellings, sorry, with sort of semi-detached, although we haven't explicitly said that, with parking more in line with what you would expect of residential properties there. So therefore, obviously, as the City Council have said, 2 number dwellings is acceptable, but 4 number dwellings in this location is not unacceptable either. The amenity space is acceptable. There's been no concerns in terms of parking spaces from highways. And as I said, Stafford Road hosts a mix of dwelling sizes, plot sizes, bungalows, terrace, detached houses. The existing use, just to make this point, the existing use of the site is Class E, which is commercial. So therefore, the site could be used for a range of commercial enterprises, which we would have 0 control over. There's no objections from Staffordshire County Highways, Ecology, Tree Officer. The proposed development site is not situated within a conservation area, although there are Grade 2 listed buildings opposite the site. But to mitigate that, as I've said before, the design and materials will be decided in any subsequent reserved matters application. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Claire, thank you very much. Claire Saint there with the report in front of you, members. Just a quick question, Claire, if I may. The close proximity of Victoria Cottage, is it Victoria Cottage, I think, which is the listed building. It's a Grade 2 listed building just across the road, isn't it? At number 2, is it number 12? Yeah. Can you just tell me, is there any impact or unacceptable impact, do you think, on the setting of the listed building from this, please?
I mean, I don't think there is. It's definitely within separation distances in terms of guidelines for that. And as I said, the design of the buildings will be, you know, any subsequent application. So therefore, we could control how it looked in the future. Okay,
thank you. Because obviously, sorry. Okay, because BE1, policy BE1, of course, does more or less insist that the buildings would become, when we get to reserve matters, would be in keeping with the street scene, etc. Because that has been a concern, I think, hasn't it, of some of the local residents. They make the point that there's a certain architectural quality to those buildings, and they would want to see that were preserved in the event of any new buildings being erected. Thank you very much. Councillor Evans, please. Councillor Evans, thank you.
Yeah, I hear what you say, and that obviously the actual buildings will be discussed later as to what they're like. I think it's important that we do accept there are smaller developments here. We desperately need smaller developments in this district. And so I think mixed developments are important as long as they actually fit in with the street scene. And I think that we hope that what is going to be proposed will be acceptable for that. I hope that it does comply with all the modern thinking about heating, etc., within the properties, because I think we've neglected that in the past, but now it's becoming even more important that we do take cognizance of the fact that we really should be ensuring that the modern facilities are used as much as possible. And I hope that will be discussed with the applicant at the time. So as far as I can see, that it's not going to cause any, as you've just asked the question, any concern about the heritage asset. So I would move that we accept this as outlined.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Evans. So that's a formal proposal there for approval. Thank you very much, Councillor Ashton. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, I think at that point, we don't really need further comments if I've had a proposer and a seconder. Can I put that to the vote then, please, members? As I say, this is only an outline application. This is simply giving our thoughts on the principle of developing this site. So nothing more than that. The reserve matters will come later, as has been pointed out by Councillor Evans. So Councillor Evans has proposed approval of this in line with the officer's recommendation, it must be said. And that has been seconded, that proposal has been seconded by Councillor Ashton. So members, I'd like to ask you to please, if you're willing to approve this application, please now show. Thank you. Once again, that is a unanimous decision. I thank you very much indeed for that. So members, I can tell you that application 23/01057/OUT has been approved. That outline planning has been approved by this planning committee here on the 8th of April 2024. With that, I'm going to announce the meeting comes to a conclusion. The time is now 7:35. I'd like to thank all the officers who've been present here this evening. Of course, thank you to all of you members as well for your participation this evening. And so, as I say, at what is now 7:36, I'm now going to announce that this meeting is closed. I thank you all very much. Good night.